Hello quilty friends and welcome back to my channel. My name's Rachel and I make videos about quilting and my creative life. Anywhere else that you can find me on the web is listed down in the description box below, so if you want to follow me on any other platform you can do that. I know in the last video I promised you that I would give you an update on my sister's quilt, and that is now finished, so I'll show you that in just a moment. But I've also got another quilt on the go that I'm hand quilting, and I wanted to show you the difference in the waddings that I've opted to use. So ordinarily I use 100% cotton wadding regardless of what project I'm doing. I just think that it feels quite nice, or I used to think it felt quite nice. It used to be my favourite to work with, but now I think I've changed my mind, and I'll explain to you the reasons why. So normally I use either 100% cotton or a 80-20 cotton polyester blend, just because those I find are the most readily available. You can get them from most quilting shops, you can order them online, that type of thing, and they are a good price. However, I tried wool wadding or batting, depending on what country you're in, they're the same thing. I chose wool wadding for my sister's quilt just because I'd done some research and people say that for hand quilted quilts, wool wadding gives you a really nice texture, so I thought I'll give it a try. And I also know that my sister really enjoys the properties of wool. Wool is kind of an all seasons type of product. It will keep you cool in the summer and it will keep you warm in the winter, but it's not heavy, it's very breathable, so even in the winter it won't make you overheat, which my sister, she runs very hot, so for her I thought this is an ideal product. She can have it on the bed hopefully all year round. And when I was hand quilting before with 100% cotton, and now that I've gone back to the cotton on this second quilt that I'm hand quilting, I have noticed a difference in terms of how easy or hard it is to get the needle through the whole quilt sandwich. There is significantly less resistance when using wool wadding, I think because it's a more open weave. So I really enjoyed using the wool wadding, and I'll show you a quick comparison of the two. The first one being my sister's quilt with the wool wadding. You can see that there's a really lovely texture. There's a very nice soft drape to the fabric itself. And when I was sitting underneath it, quilting the quilt, it was very lightweight, but it was also very warm. But I didn't realise it at the time. It was only till my partner kept saying to me, "God, it's cold in here." And I said, "Is it?" And then it wasn't till a few moments later that I realised maybe that's the actual wadding that's keeping me warm, but not making me feel like I've got a full quilt on me and I'm really hot, which is what I do sometimes feel like. You feel like, oh, I'm being drowned in this quilt, especially if it's too warm. Now that I've moved on to hand quilting the cotton quilt, first thing that I've noticed is it's really heavy. On my lap, it's a lot heavier. Even though the two quilts are pretty much the same size, there is actually more fabric in my sister's quilt because it's made up of smaller pieces, so there'd be more fabric, especially with the extra seams that you get on the back with small pieces. And I've also noticed with the cotton one, it just doesn't have that snuggly feeling that the wool quilt does have. I think it might be to do with how dense it is, perhaps, because it is quite a dense wadding. It was a different brand of wadding that we've used, but it's still cotton wadding and the makeup looks very similar to others. I've also noticed that when I'm hand quilting it, when I'm just on a plain piece of fabric, sometimes, only occasionally, it will be difficult to get my needle through, almost like I'm trying to quilt through a seam, but there isn't a seam there. It is just that the wadding is that little bit more difficult to get your needle through, which is what I have heard other people say as well on this matter. I think it's to do with how the wadding is made, whether it's needle punched or not, but the wool one was wool needle punched, but it's a lot lighter and airier in itself. I think it also depends whether it has got scrim added to it, because that can make it more difficult to get your needle through. I'd be interested to know if anyone in the comments has used wool wadding for machine quilting and how that comes out. I bet that would look really nice with long arm quilting with all the swirls and things on it. I think that would really make it pop. Let me know in the comments if you've done that. I'll just show you two examples of wadding here. So this is 100% cotton wadding. So you can see there that it has a texture, and that is from the needle punch aspect, which holds all of the layers together. And as you can see, it is quite a dense wadding in comparison to the wool. The wool has much more of like this halo effect, which is what they call loft, which gives it that fluffy look to the actual quilt itself, because all of these fibres stand up and it makes it much more puffier and much more squishier. So you can see how much more squish it has. Let's do that with this one. So these are both folded over the same amount of times, and you can see that this one is just so much more fluffier. That one is just, this one is dense, and this one seems to bounce back a lot more. And also, what I researched online is that when you use wool wadding, the quilt will be a little bit more resistant to creasing if you've got it folded up for storage, in comparison to one where you've used cotton or a cotton mix wadding. So I also wanted to touch on one of the main downsides to the wool wadding, and that is the cost. It is considerably more expensive than a cotton or a cotton polyester mix. So the wool wadding that I purchased, for one that was 90 inches wide, it was £16.95 per metre. And comparably, 100% cotton one that I also usually purchase, and probably this one, is £13.50 per metre. So it's over £3 more expensive per metre. And I bet if you used a cotton polyester blend, you might find that the price came down even lower for the cotton one. So that is the main downside. But I think for me, for most of my quilts that I think I will either gift to people that I really love, or quilts for myself, I think I am going to switch to wool wadding. Maybe I might have a look to see if I can get a better price if I bought more of it, maybe a roll. I can store it upstairs. So if you are in the UK and you found a better price for wool wadding, better than almost £17 a metre, please leave me a comment and let me know. With the wool wadding, you did also have to quilt it closer together, but it was still 8 inches, the maximum quilting was. But as you can see on my sister's quilt, quilting is less than 3 inches apart, so it is a lot more densely quilted than what you would need to. With the cotton wadding that I usually use, it is a little bit more stable and you can quilt up to 10 inches apart. I don't think I would ever quilt a quilt 10 inches apart though, but you may choose to do that. But for me, the thing that I did really love about the wool wadding was just the puffiness of the quilt, how much my hand stitches really became more defined, and the aspect of it being so breathable without even noticing that it was warm. You just really acclimatized to a very comfortable temperature, which I was just amazed at, because obviously the front and the back of the quilt is cotton, but it did seem to really make a big difference. I obviously haven't washed this quilt with the wool wadding. It's my first time using it, so I don't have any comments on the shrinkage. I have done a bit of research online, and apparently wool doesn't shrink as much, but I think what you would get is maybe a crinkled effect of the cotton. I don't know, only time will tell, and I'll leave it to my sister to wash the quilt. But the cotton wadding that I usually use shrinks by about 5%, so it all depends on whether you're happy with shrinkage. I do really like shrinkage because it gives it a nice crinkled and wrinkled antique look to a quilt that isn't particularly old, so I don't mind the shrinking aspect. So I probably would like it if the wool one shrunk to some degree, so that the quilt had a really nice feel to it, especially with the hand quilting. So if you do follow me over on any other social media platforms, when my sister washes the quilt and when I see it washed, I'll post a picture of it over there so people can see how the quilt came out with a wash. I've never used bamboo wadding, but I have felt it in the shop and it does feel very light and airy, and I think I've been told that it's very breathable as well, so that would be a good one. But I think bamboo is also quite expensive. I've used polyester wadding in the past as well. I'll show you that quilt, and the polyester behaved very similar to the wool wadding in the fact that it is very puffy. It's a really puffy quilt. It's a nice quilt. If you don't need the quilt to be breathable, perhaps you know that it's just going to be draped over the back of a sofa like mine is, then the polyester wadding is quite a good wadding to use because it is very puffy. It makes your stitches show really nicely, But don't look at the stitches on mine, because this was the first quilt that I put through the machine and I didn't extend my stitch length, so the stitches are very close together. But you'll be able to see that there is a really nice definition to the quilting because of how puffy the wadding is, and then everything has shrunk a little bit and it's given it a really nice crinkled feel to it. And the reason why I chose that, because it was the first big project that I'd finished for myself, and it was a scrap project, and the polyester wadding was very cheap in comparison. So I think there's a time and a place for every type of wadding that there is, and I would urge you to experiment with different waddings and just see how you like the texture that they produce. Because I don't think I would have moved away from cotton wadding if I didn't think my sister would really like the wool wadding because of the properties. But now I think I am converted. I would also use polyester again in the future. I've been thinking, because my dog loves that quilt that's on the back of the sofa, and I'm not sure if it's because it's on the back of the sofa she likes to pull it down and curl up in it, or if she likes it because of how puffy and warm it is. So when I do make a quilt specifically for the dog in the future, I might just stick some polyester wadding in there so that it stays nice and warm, because I don't think I would use wool wadding on the dog. Or would I? She is precious. So I thought I would just make this short video. Let's have a discussion in the comments about what your favourite wadding is and what you find to be the advantages. And please let me know if you know a cheaper place where I can purchase wadding from. So I'll speak to you in the comments and we'll have a chat about it. And until the next video, you take care. Bye bye.